Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happenstance into this Truth Bomb Riff. My name is Patrick Lovell. I am the producer with the $71 trillion truth, and it is my great honor. It's my great pleasure. It's a really, really cool moment for me to connect with my good buddy, Cameron Carpenter, out of Salt Lake City, Utah, a guy that I've known for decades. And we share a lot of the same energy and passion for a lot of things. But I thought that it would be really cool. This is, by the way, the 775th edition of these Truth Bomb Riffs over 4 years. To try,
Nice.
yeah, to try to get everybody out there in the netherworlds to understand the methodology of corruption. And a lot of people do, a lot of people don't. Some people know more than others. Some people are kind of, grabbing at straws. Some people are lost in the mix. But, you and I, every once in a while, we get a great chance to hang out together, do our thing, and connect as we always have. But we're at a moment now, Cam, that even exceeds, I think, our worst sort of supposition, our worst inference, even going back to our youth, where we could imagine a lot, right? I'm
Yeah.
curious at this stage of the game in 2026, how the world finds Cam Carpenter. What's your worldview, bro?
Well, the world finds me infuriated, um, gobsmacked, um, disillusioned, uh, confused, energetic, and also engaged in absorbing knowledge and disseminating it and talking with people. And I've really come to a point where I've realized that I've got to try and even be better at talking with people who I may disagree with politically or ideologically, just to try to understand their point of view. Because without that, no progress can be made. And there isn't a blue states of America or red states of America, even though we like to frame it that way, but that to our peril. The founding fathers even said that. Democratic republic, if we can keep it, ma'am. Um, there's the United States of America, and there's the South, which is extremely different than the North, and there's the West Coast and the East Coast. But unless I can talk with people and understand where they're coming from and maybe have an intelligent or reasonable dialogue about what their perceptions and thoughts are, and maybe give some insight without necessarily trying to change minds, then there won't be the progress that we need in this country. And that's what conclusion I've come to. But I'm still also pretty pissed off, Patrick, at what's being allowed, at what the cowardly, spineless, suck up, sycophantic GOP is allowing. And it just blows my mind. In fact, I wrote to my U.S. Congressperson, Celeste Malloy, who's a newly elected, and also my senator, John Curtis, and I just asked them, "What are you doing? Please explain. How could you vote for this big, beautiful, ugly bill when you know that it's going to make health care unaffordable for thousands of your constituents, and also take food security away from thousands of people, and also defund schools, which absolutely need more funding, and all the other social constructs or good aspects of our society." And I didn't write them to call them names. I wrote them to say, why? Please explain. And I'm still holding out hope for both of you to exhibit some courage and some integrity and to vote against Trump and the Trump administration. And I really would like you to write back, not a form letter, not some glib response that doesn't mean anything, but like, oh, well, we're protecting the American way and the good of the American people, and it's such horseshit. And I, but I invited them. I said, please have the courage to write back and to give me a dialogue. And now in front of you, John Curtis, you're in the Senate. You've got the Save America Act in front of you, and that will disenfranchise voters who are U.S. citizens by the thousands, who are your fellow Utahns. If they're married, they got divorced, they don't have access to their birth certificate, or they don't have a passport. Maybe they don't need a passport. Maybe they don't want to travel internationally. And they have to go get those things, which sometimes can be difficult, and then go in person to register to vote. I mean, they're already citizens. And the whole myth about citizens, non-citizens in the Trump administration keeps just bugling this out like it's truth. That thousands, hundreds of thousands of non-citizens are voting. No, they're not, because they can't. First of all, they can't register to vote because they're not citizens. You need to prove citizenship. And even if they somehow game the system or figure out a cheat, they're going to get caught, and then they face prosecution. And almost any illegal immigrant that's got half a wit of sense is not going to do anything that's going to flag them to have criminal activity and then get deported. I mean, they're trying to lay as low as they can. So it's just absolute horse feathers that's happening. It's not happening. Hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants or non-citizens are not voting in our elections. And it's just that another story that they're telling. And I wrote to John Curtis just to say, you have this in front of you. You're a co-sponsor, along with our other esteemed senator from Utah, who's an absolute embarrassment, Mike Lee, who actually said, and I remember this, and I'll paraphrase it, when interviewed on a right-wing media program during the beginning of Trump's first term, when asked about the other side, the party that's not in power, and the balance in the House of Representatives and the Senate, he said, well, why should we be held to the whims of the majority when we know how to govern as the knowledgeable minority? Why should we be held in our country to the whims of the majority? Which is, that's the whole house of cards, buddy. That's a democratic republic. You elect representatives to represent your constituents that put you in office. And the reason I'm so infuriated is I hear all these politicians, and even on the Democratic side, I this and I that, and it's like, where's the talk about my constituents have written me and said this? I've heard from a lot of my constituents that have said X and Y, and some of them are conflicting points of view, and I'm trying to make sense of it. But I am making sense of it because it's not about me and my personal beliefs. It's about what my constituents are telling me about their lives and how they're suffering, and how they can barely put shoes on their kids' feet, and how their education in the schools is maybe subpar, and how their husband and wife working their tails off just to make ends meet. When in the post-war 50s, one person in the household had to work and they had a pretty good life. 3 or 4 vacations a year, kids had shoes, schools were well funded, and we've lost that. And a lot of it is because of corporate greed and shipping jobs overseas, and the raiding of the treasure of this country, and good companies that private hedge funds come in and leverage with almost always unescapable debt, paying themselves handsome fees, and then wrecking the companies. Hey, we saved this company. No, you didn't. You took it over, and you raped it, basically, and then you paid yourself a bunch of fees and leveraged it with debt so you could suck as much money out of it as you could. I don't even think that should be allowed. And it's sad, because many good companies that have thousands of good employees, hundreds of good employees, even just a small community business that grows and gets, the bigger companies see it as a threat, so they take it over, and then the hedge funds get involved, and then they move on, and it falls apart, and they're like vultures.
That's exactly.
So yeah, so it's infuriating, but I also realize I can't just go around with my head on fire, yelling and screaming, and screw this, screw that, and these corrupted rat bastards, which they are, and I'll call them out on it. But I also want to talk to people and say, why do you support this, or do you support this, or are you sick of it yet? Are you maybe ready to support ranked choice voting and maybe a few other political parties, or vote for a Democrat if you've been voting for Republicans, because they've had the Senate and the House and the executive and the courts, to
Yeah.
be honest.
SCOTUS,
And look,
especially.
and look what's happened.
Yeah.
In the look where we are. Make America great again? Come on. It's insane. I'm stupefied at the idiocy and the level of corruption. And a lot of the idiocy is a lot of people are stupid and they keep allowing themselves to get duped. And I think a lot of them are just embarrassed to admit that they got fooled. And I'd love to just grind them into the ground, but that doesn't help anything. That doesn't help anything. Like, okay, you whether you want to admit you got fooled and you bought the cream pie that was given to you, which is just nothing but air and horseshit. Let's move on. Are you ready to support something different that's real and where it's a candidate that truly is an elected representative? They're representing you and your best interest rather than giving not 1 ounce of care about your interests or your welfare or your well-being. And that's exactly what the GOP is. And on ideological lines about all this poppycock, this unnecessary, the transgender, and we shouldn't have boys competing with girls. And like, yeah, we probably shouldn't, but is that really what we're focused on? Really? And now we've started this unplanned, unsubstantiated reasons, no factual evidence for all the claims they're making. They can't even stick to any of the claims they're making. And they're asking for 200 billion now to fund this with no end in sight, no plan. And you know what 200 billion would do for our schools? You know what 200 billion would do for the crumbling infrastructure that Trump ran on?
Healthcare.
Trump ran on better education, healthcare. We can't afford to provide healthcare to people, affordable healthcare. We can't keep providing Medicare and Medicaid. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. And the border, it's insane to me that when Trump was out of office, he still had enough following because of the cowardice of the GOP to say, I don't want this bipartisan immigration bill passed because it will actually do a lot of good for the border and immigration and streamline the asylum process and also disallow people that don't have any business asking for asylum to not get it and to be sent away. And it will make Joe Biden and the Democrats look good. So, MAGA Mike, you've got to shut it down and vote against it. And it pissed James Langford off from Oklahoma, the senator from Oklahoma, who's a staunch, he's fairly moderate, but he's a hardline Republican, and he worked very hard on that bill. And they had a really good bill in place and would have provided billions of dollars for funding for border patrol and increased immigration processing and asylum procedures and housing and just due process. And now there is no due process. There's just poorly trained thugs running around with ICE uniforms, ignoring due process and the rule of law, and tearing children away from parents, which is abhorrent, and just sending people to other countries, which is also unconstitutional and illegal. And it just blows me away that due process and the rule of law, which is always so highly touted in the GOP. We're a nation of laws and we're a nation of God. Yeah, well, if God and Jesus came down to earth today, they would cry and they would probably cast you out into the lowest levels of hell for what you've been doing. And you know it. So that's how I am.
Dude, that was awesome.
And I'm just, and I just, as mad as I am, I just have to keep reminding myself, Cam, you got to just talk to people, because those that voted for Trump twice, three times, they're not your enemy. They're misguided. Or maybe in some ways they are your enemy, but you got to try to make them your friend. Because if they voted just because they're wealthy and they could, all they're worried about is their pocketbook, which is immoral and it's selfish. And it actually makes them the worst kind of parasite. It's one that destroys their own host. That's a dumb parasite. This country is strongest when the middle class is strong. And the economy is strongest when families have enough money and they're spending that money because they have enough. They take vacations, they buy their kids shoes, teachers are being paid well. Therefore, the kids grow up smarter and they create jobs sooner, and they're not just living in this stressed out world where they wake up and wonder, what the hell am I doing? And what future do I have? They know they have a future because they're well educated and they're worldly aware, and they have the means to communicate and the means to build a future for themselves. That makes the country strong. And all the other countries are watching our decline. Maybe some of them are happy, but I bet a lot of them are just sad. Like, well, they had a good run, 250 years, but they're in the decline now. Not to say we can't turn it around, because we absolutely could. I'd love to see John Ossoff run for president. I'd love to see Jamie Raskin run for president. Someone that's well spoken and isn't afraid to call out the BS and hold them to account. And I loved watching John Ossoff just mop the floor with Tulsi Gabbard in her security briefing. The head of national security, and flippantly wouldn't answer questions. Well, is it your assessment that the attacks on Iran that were unsubstantiated and unwarranted and were carried out anyway by the Trump administration this summer absolutely obliterated their nuclear capabilities? Yes, absolutely destroyed them. Was it your assessment that they were rebuilding? No, we didn't have any assessment that they were rebuilding their nuclear capabilities. Well, the president said that the reason for this new attack on Iran with Israel was because there was an imminent threat and nuclear security. Is that your position? Well, it's not my place to say. Incorrect, Tulsi. It is absolutely your duty to say. You're the head of national security. It's not. Is that the internet, the IC's assessment that there was an imminent nuclear threat? And she wouldn't answer the question because she knew that there wasn't one. But Trump came out and said there was one, and that was one of the reasons for attacking Iran. And he mopped the floor with her, and she should be held in contempt and immediately removed from her position and face criminal charges for being in contempt of Congress and lying under oath. She was under oath. And then you get into Scam Blondie, who's been lying under oath since day one, and Cash, and just the whole consortium of goons and vacant, soulless, vapid, incompetent people he surrounded himself with. The only qualification they have is they're loyal to Donald Trump. And I'm sure they're getting enriched in some sort of way. I'm sure the money go round. There's money going into accounts somewhere, somehow.
Yeah, just like Chrissy Noem and Corey Lewandowski, boinking in the Mile High Club while they're shooting Americans in the face and imprisoning others and sending the rest out to Central American gulags while they're skimming $200 million. Man, welcome to Trump's rotting corpse of pimps, whores, junkies, and parasites. Right, dude. First of all, that what you just laid out was so powerful. I'll say it here first, man. Cam Carpenter for whatever office. I know you're busy in your own professional life and everything else, but what you just demonstrated to me and why I wanted to interact with you was so powerful, Cam. It was.
Well,
and I know.
Thank you for saying that. I don't know how powerful it is. It just seems right to me, and I wish.
Right on.
I just wish we had candidates that were talking about holding public, frequent meetings with their constituents and setting up and I mean, they all have email, but do they take it seriously? I just, and are out among their people and saying, listen, I was elected as the highest honor of this country, one of them, to represent you and to do good and vote for policies and procedures that promote and ensure the greater good for our country, not to enrich myself, not to think about what cush consulting job or lobbying job I can get when I'm out of here. And that's largely what it's become. And it's
Okay.
not just Republicans, it's Democrats as well.
Absolutely.
It's a sick, broken, disappointing system. But yeah, I'd love to run for office eventually. And maybe that time will come sooner than later. Maybe I'll just start small and
Well,
yeah.
the first thing is to obviously just speak your truth to the public, which we're doing. And I want to just kind of check off some boxes of some things that you verbalized that I thought was so incredibly important because recently I had another dialogue with a woman who is pretty much the lead organizer for Salt Lake Indivisible, and she's been an activist for a long time, and she's somebody in the trenches that does things like you just said you were involved with, and I'm so proud of you for doing it, writing letters and doing what's necessary and calling their representatives to the carpet and having them respond. But we've talked about a lot of this, and we've seen this throughout the country. The oligarchic class, the Epstein class, the Heritage Foundation class, the billionaire class, these guys have been so incredibly on it for decades to dumb down the representatives, our representatives. They
Right.
throw huge amount of money into the people that are going to just basically jump to their tune like the monkey, right? They're going to dance
Yeah.
and they're going to ignore us, and they've got it pretty much locked up. And in a state like where we live, for example, I wanted to tee you up for this because there's a lot of incredibly important issues. Look, we both love the outdoors. We've spent decades of our lives in the mountains, and we're right in the middle of a microwave where I think our temperatures right now are nuking, north of 80. Snow Basin's about to close this weekend. And, we're, weekly testament to you can't be anti climate change and a skier, for example, or a snowboarder in
No,
your neck of the woods.
no, you can't.
And yet in our state, to drive the point forward, it's become this libertarian paradise, right? You've got these unbelievable financial interests, tech bro interests, all relatively new. I'm going to say the last 15 years. Following Mitt Romney, who was, of course, Bain Capital CEO,
Yep.
the largest private equity
Yeah.
in the entire world. And now we've got Goldman, we've got the top hedge funds, we've got the top private equity, we got all of the major tech scenarios. And now we've got AI in addition to all of the other environmental sort of catastrophe we're in the midst of. And one of the main issues has always been air quality as
Yes.
well as open lands. I wonder if you can address that, from your perspective and what your concerns are.
Yeah. I went to yoga this morning, went up to Alta and met friend's dad who lives here, and my buddy's daughter who's visiting her grandfather, and skied a few runs, and I had to leave at 1 o'clock because it was just too hot and the snow is getting sticky and mushy. And it's March 20th, first day of spring. And in past years and all the time we grew up here, that March would be cold and lots of snow. And the snow's, there's some there. I think Park City will close next week. They're a little bit lower elevation, but it's disappearing. And it's not that it's global warming necessarily, it's just global climate change. The patterns are shifting. It doesn't snow down here in the valley like it used to. We have a shorter snowfall season here. And we had the anomaly of 4 years ago, we had 950 inches at Alta, almost 1,000 inches. But they stopped keeping track, and that was a huge winter. But it's definitely warmer. The polar ice caps are melting. We're still polluting. Fossil fuels are still being promoted and getting massive corporate welfare when they're making more than the GDP of most countries, the oil companies are, and they shouldn't be getting any subsidies at all. They should actually be paying higher taxes. And if that makes gas cost more, then let it cost more. But it's been proven mainly by the fossil fuel extracting and distribution companies that fossil fuels cause global warming. Texaco proved it back in the late 70s, and then and paid for those studies with their own scientists and realized, oh well, we can't let this get out, or it'll be terrible for our bottom line. And it's happening, and everyone just thought, oh well, yeah, we got to do something about it, and but no one's really doing much. Maybe it, people are trying. But it takes more than just individuals trying. It takes government action, and that's been disappointing. There should be much more investment in wind and solar power. We've got a wind corridor running from Mexico all the way up through the Midwest and mid-country states all the way up to Canada. It's a massive wind corridor. There's wind that blows off the coasts of East and West Coast that we could have windmills capturing wind, and the sun shines every day, hotter and hotter every year. Um, and here locally, we're watching the Great Salt Lake, the lake that our capital city of our state is named after, dry up because all that's been happening in the legislative body is a lot of lip service about, oh, we've got to save the lake and we're going to take these actions. And yet none of the actions do anything. The lake keeps getting lower and lower every year. And so, and I work with Utah Rivers Council, and they're a great organization that disseminates information about our water usage and our allocation and diversion of water. And there's enough water to get to the Great Salt Lake. It's just that the positions in place for private landowners and the water engineer of the state of Utah and the Division of Water Resources is not actually taking action. They're just giving lip service to, we need to allow more water to actually reach the Great Salt Lake. And so that's got to change, or the lake will dry up and become a toxic dust bowl that will fill the whole Salt Lake Valley with toxic carcinogenic dust, because that lake is filled with the remnants and the residue of over 100 years of heavy mining in Little Cottonwood, and Big Cottonwood, and Parley's Canyon. Park City and Alto were silver mines, mining towns, communities. And back in those days, there wasn't regulation. They just hosed down whole hillsides and drove the dirt with the rocks into sluices and separated it and crushed it. And then they rinse it out and get the ore they wanted, take it to processing, and then they'd process a lot of it on site with water, and all of that water would go into the little streams that would then trickle into the bigger streams and run down into the Jordan River and then end up in the Great Salt Lake. Now, when that lake's got enough water, 4,200 feet elevation of water, then all that toxic junk is covered up with water. But when it is allowed to drop below that level, the shoreline gets exposed, and we have predominant northwest winds that come into this valley, which brings us our Utah champagne powder. And it goes across that dry lake bed and picks up the dust. And I don't think most people in this valley have any idea what's in that dust. It's got lead, cadmium, arsenic, bunch of other chemicals that I have written down somewhere, but it's not good. They're heavy metals that are PM 2.5 or smaller that get embedded in your lungs and actually alter human DNA once you breathe it in. And a lot of people don't know that. The Utah Physicians for Healthy Environment are trying to spread that word. Some of that air pollution actually constricts your blood vessels. And they know that because they can expose people to the air on bad air days and have a magnifying camera monitor on the vessels in their eyes that are the only vessels you can actually see surface, and they watch them constrict in real time. And can cause strokes because people with limited capacity in their veins and arteries breathe that air in, and it constricts their veins or causes them to have a blood clot. It can kill them.
Jeez, it kind
So
of reminds me
so
of a scene of like Joffrey Baratheon in Game of Thrones when he drank arsenic. Man, that's like
yeah,
that's like the future of the entire Salt Lake Valley. That
yeah,
self
and
kind of
it's and it you know it happened. It happened to the Owens River Valley and the Owens Lake in inland from Los Angeles. And they kept diverting water out for use by agriculture and farmers, and thought, oh well, just a little allocation here, a little allocation there. Well, eventually the Owens Lake dried up and became a toxic dust bowl, and that's not even down or upwind from the wind blows the opposite way. It blows in from the coast, but it was still causing dust storms and great um, environmental peril to the towns that were in that river valley. They spent $10 billion over a course of 5 years in Los Angeles County to try to figure out what to do to mitigate that problem. And they found a solution. You know what it was? We got to fill the lake back up with water.
wow, desalinization or something. Yeah, there you go.
Really? That's brilliant.
No kidding. Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
you couldn't figure that out in 30 days of discussions. Like, yeah, of course you've got to keep the lake full, and it's this now we're seeing it on a much grander scale, the Great Salt Lake, and it's when it's at that 42 or just as it existed for hundreds of years is about 20 times larger than the Owens River Valley
Wow.
Lake and Owens Lake. Now the same thing happened in Russia with the Aral Sea, which is a huge fishery
Oh,
for
interesting.
all the towns around the Aral Sea, and they started letting it be diverted and drained to fuel a nascent cotton growing business or industry. And it got smaller and smaller, and fish were dying off by the thousands, and the fishery collapsed, and because the lake got too saline, and now it's dry and a toxic dry lake bed. And all the communities around that lake that depended on it have had to move away, and it's just a toxic dust bowl with no one living at it now. So we've seen what can happen. It's not a mystery, and yet it's just lip service from our brave legislators, mainly Republicans, because good legislation has been proposed to actually enforce good action. There was one I worked on pretty hard to generate awareness of and ask people to write their state senators and Congress people to vote against, and it passed ultimately. Sadly, it did get altered a little bit, but the main provisions were that made it so egregious were still in the bill, and it basically changed existing Utah law that states that the state water engineer, when considering applications from industry or development for water allocation from, say, the Bear River or any public water source to be used privately for public or for private profit, and it's not their water, it's the state's water, really the people's water, that the state engineer doesn't even have to consider. It eliminated language that says has to consider ramifications of downstream effects on sovereign land and effects to the environment and the wildlife. And so now, for instance, if a developer submitted a petition for a water diversion from the Bear River and said, well, we want X amount of acre feet so we can, process that water and use it for non-culinary and to water our lawns and the Kentucky bluegrass we're putting in here and make this private for-profit subdivision work and provide housing, then the state engineer doesn't even have to consider what that allocation would do to the water flow in the wetlands downstream or on sovereign lands downstream. The entirety of the Great Salt Lake is on Utah sovereign lands. And a lot of people don't know that. And so that's just an egregious elimination of language. So the state engineer doesn't even have to consider those impacts now. All they have to consider is what good, this water allocation can provide to a private entity asking for it. And RFK talked about this a lot before he went cuckoo and lost his soul. Um, externalization of cost. And we see it a lot in the EPA Superfund cleaning up all these bullshit polluters that have decimated communities in the coal industry, the mining industry, just polluters that set up shop in different towns and pollute the airshed and the watershed and create massive contamination. And then who gets to pay for the cleanup? Company just says, "Oh shit, who could have known? You know, we were polluting this badly or contaminating this community." I guess we're gonna have to declare bankruptcy, but they give themselves some big bonuses first. Declare bankruptcy, ruin the jobs and the livelihood of all those people that worked for them, and then who gets to pay for the cleanup? We do, taxpayer. Same in West Virginia, they're removing whole mountaintops and having coal trucks running up and down these public roadways that are paid for by the public, creating huge gouges in the roads because of the weight of the trucks and all the dust along the side of the road, and there's nothing living on either side of the road. And then when it's time to repave the road, the company doesn't pay for that. They raise taxes in West Virginia, and the taxpayers pay for that. So they can keep making private profit and externalizing the costs, and that's fucking immoral. And it's also shouldn't be allowed. It's just egregious, and it's the United States of corruption, man. It's
That's it. That's it.
And all we can do is be aware of it and make other people aware of it. Not all we can do, but it starts with that: being aware, being active, and making other people aware, and then calling it out, and then writing your elected representative and reminding them they're a representative and saying, "I'm concerned about this, and you should be too." And what are you doing?
Yeah.
What's your stance? And don't send me back some bullshit form letter saying, "Well, I heard you, and we're looking into this." No, that's over. That ship has sailed, and we're not going to tolerate it anymore. And it should be well known by elected representatives that people aren't going to tolerate that anymore. If they get a form letter response, they should send it immediately back and say, I want a real response. Yeah. But yeah, the environment, sorry to go off on some tangents.
No, please keep
those
going.
are some examples of what's happening. And it's directly causal for the detriment of our watershed and our ski industry, which sometimes you have to monetize it because it's the only way to get people to listen. But it's a billions of dollars a year industry, one of the best skiing destinations in the world because of the light, huge amounts of powder that fall frequently in the Wasatch Range, fueled heavily by lake effect evaporation of storm systems that are dry and cold coming across that warm body of water and with salt in it and picking up massive water vapor from that body of water, and then orographic lifting up over the Wasatch and losing their ability to hold that water and dropping it on the Wasatch front and in the Wasatch Mountains. And that's our snowpack. It fuels our rivers and our reservoirs, and it also provides some of the best skiing in the world. And if you diminish the size of the lake, you're going to diminish the size of the snowfall and therefore the snowpack. And it's just a downward spiral of economic and opportunity decline, and also environmental decline. And it's so easy to see. And don't play dumb and tell me you don't see that. Elected representatives, GOP, that are getting lobbied or taking money from people that don't want you to have, laws that make it so the state engineer and other entities have to consider downstream effects of your actions or water diversion or water allocation. Like, do something and protect the waterway, protect the airshed, protect our ability to not have a toxic dried up lake bed dust bowl directly upwind from the capital city of our state and our major population center where most people in the state live. And it will also once the dust storms have already happened. I've seen them. People are like, oh wow, that was a big storm and a lot of dust blew up, and they don't get it. And I'm just driving around like looking at the whole valley with a mask on, full of thick, heavy dust that blocks out the sun and lasts for a day or two until the wind calms down. And they have no idea that they're breathing in lead, arsenic, cadmium, and carcinogens that are picked up and delivered into the valley. And people will get it when kids and adults start getting sick and getting cancer, and they'll move away, and it could be a huge housing value crisis if they allow it to dry up. And
And all the big
you
money's
know,
not going to come in if the winter dries up.
yeah, and being in commercial real estate, I get asked about it by out of state clients that come in and they're looking at Utah or Phoenix or Denver, and they are seriously looking at Salt Lake City to locate like a satellite office or relocate their company if they want to move from someone else, because they like the low cost of power, mainly because we have a shitload of coal and burn it. They like the young, well-educated workforce. They like the quality of life and 5 national parks within a half a day's drive from center and some of the best skiing in the world and all those things. But they ask me more than people that are here locally, what's going on with the lake? Are they going to keep it full of water? Are they going to save it? And in honesty, I have to say, I don't know. I hope so. And that's hard to do because I'm trying to be an ambassador to Salt Lake. And I'm trying to, and I tout all its benefits: the lifestyle, the low cost of power, the highly educated, young, vibrant workforce, even the Mormon church and Mormons, how resilient and industrious they are, and how we are a strong, vibrant community and we take care of each other. But they've heard it. They've read stories about it. They've read stories in correlation with the Owens River Valley in LA and how much money they spend and how they figured out the only solution is to fill it back up with water. They've seen stories done comparing the Great Salt Lake to the RLC and what could happen here. And so they ask about it. And they're asking in earnest because they don't want to have their people and their company locating here if they're going to have to pack everything up in 10 years and move out because the lake's dried up. And I have to, in honesty, because I'm a person of high integrity and honesty, and that's just how I live my life. I in honesty can't say to them that yes, they're going to absolutely take care of it because I don't know. And so far, they've demonstrated that it's just lip service, and they're not really doing the things that they need to do. And in this latest legislative session in the state legislature that just ended, there were multiple bills that were introduced that would weaken the restrictions on pulling water out of the lake, and also that one I talked about, the consideration of the state engineer of considering environmental effects and downstream impacts on sovereign lands of water allocation and diversion applications that they don't even have to consider. Remove the language from the state law that the state engineer has to consider those ramifications when looking at allocation and diversion applications, which is, it's just insane. It's insane and egregious. And so I can't say to people looking to bring their company here, and other guys in my industry are like, well, of course you have to tell them we're going to solve that problem. Like, are we? I mean, I say they're working on it. It's not like I tell them, no, absolutely, you shouldn't come here and locate your company here. I have to be diplomatic about it, but I also can't tell them unequivocally, yeah, no problem. They've got this. It's being handled, because it's not. It's not being handled. It's just being talked about. And that's, and then Governor Spencer Cox, who at one time said, we just need to agree to disagree nicely. And there's a lot of bad things the Trump administration is doing. And I don't agree with him, but we're just going to have to agree to disagree. And then he had some meeting with him, and then boom, just like that. It's one of Trump's biggest fans. And who knows what happened to Spencer, but Spencer, golly. Yeah.
Some degree of that for sure.
Why couldn't you just stick with your guns, buddy? But yeah, that's super disappointing.
Well,
And now
and Utah is a test case for these clowns in a lot of ways that
yeah.
I'll maybe touch on. But I just want to insert here just to turn the conversation slightly towards the second half of this from a standpoint that, look, Cam, and I knew you would be like this, but at the same time, I'm even more impressed with your knowledge, your micro and your macro, but more importantly, the notion of honesty and integrity baked into all of that, and the thought process, and also navigating reality in the best way you can, given all of the sort of pressures that you can't just go and you can't, quite frankly, slam dance your way through
yeah.
the sort of
the corruption,
the semi-permeable membrane of the MAGA mind, and all of the conformity that we've known about, for our whole lives, kind of thing. But what I've always said to the folks that tune into these truth bombs and people I've been impacting and impacting me throughout, and what I'm trying to do, especially at this time where so many people are so overwhelmed, they're so frustrated, there's so many people lost in translation. And that from that position, two things can happen most of the time. One is you just disappear and you fall out, which I think far too many people have done for now decades, or you go absolutely extreme and bonkers, right? Which is hard when you're up against a movable force and it's wrong. Sometimes you start moving into different places. And so I want to give you a chance to respond to that, but what is imperative for what I'm trying to reach people to understand is that we have no time. We've run out of time.
Yeah.
This is a situation where the temperatures globally, I think we're in triple digits in Los Angeles. I get the micro and I get the climate patterns and everything else. The temperatures have been going through the roof for now, 15 years, where the top 3 temperatures of all time have been in the last 5 or something. And this year is going to far surpass that. So that's one aspect of knowledge. The economic knowledge is the other. The understanding that the middle class, decency, and all of the things that you identified morally, which is a construct that's super important. But at the apex of it all are doers. Now, just a quick question in terms of your activism. So we both have interacted our whole lives with people that are high achieving type of people, whether it's in some sort of outdoor sport, whether it's mountain climbing or skiing, surfing, this, that, and the other, or business. We've been around those kinds of people, and we understand what it takes to get stuff done, right?
Right.
Now we're in a situation where the bad guys with the most money have pulled off just the inverse perverse of everything that we think we are, as in terms of dynamism, in terms of freedom, in terms of innovation, all of those types of things that we grew up believing in that constitute the American dream. Now it's just gangster monopoly and capitalism is what we could call it. A lot of those terms are loaded, but the bottom line is it's just simply corruption. I'm curious if you can give me, just kind of a next level analysis when you try to understand where we are in this time period and our age and everything that's on the line. What do you find yourself waking up to every single day and going to bed to? What is that song that plays inside your head that makes you keep moving? And does it just skip a beat? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does sometimes skip a beat because I sometimes have to just detach from my own mental wellness and focus, because if you keep going down the rabbit hole, it can get pretty depressing, dismal, and then you're ineffective because you're not refueling your own self and soul, and you're so mad that you get mad and depressed, and you're not effective as a human being when you're in those states of mind. Believe me, like the Clash said, anger can be power, and I use it to fuel my actions, and I use it to be aware so I can reasonably debate people, or at least intelligently talk with people that I come across about issues across the whole spectrum of everything. And I can't know everything, but things I'm concerned about, like the environment and protections for the environment that are enforceable and actually have teeth, um, laws and legislation that are introduced that weaken those protections, just basic corruption. Let's not call it anything else because that's what it is. Power held and then used in corrupt ways. I like to be able to remember enough fact to be able to bring it up when I'm talking with people, and refute things that aren't true when someone's presenting something that's as truth when it's not. And it's important because a lot of time people that are in the corrupt or are serving the corrupt system just say things as if, of course that's Trump says it all the time. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows this. You know it. No. If someone says something that's not true, and I know that it's not, I'll call them out and say, well, no, not in a mean way, but more in the British type of way. Like, well, that's actually not the case. The history shows that this is how it is. Or if it's something I don't know about, like, well, you've just made this proclamation. What evidence do you have to support that? I'll trust you, but like Reagan said, trust but verify.
Right.
Show me why what you've just stated is true or is the case. So I'm trying to stay informed. I'm trying to encourage other people to stay informed. And I'm also encouraging other people not to just be mad and angry and pointing the finger and they and those assholes and those rat bastards. And yeah, that has a place, but call them out. When you see something that's posted, respond to it. When you hear someone say something that's just not true, say that's not right. We've got to start calling out BS. You can't just let it slide because we are out of time. You're absolutely right. We're out of time. And so I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to encourage other people. Don't just be angry within yourself or your group of friends. Try to interact with people. And when they say something that's not right, don't be an asshole and tell them they're, screw you, you jackass. You're wrong. Because that doesn't go anywhere. That just leads to yelling and nothing happens with that. But say, why do you feel that way, and what evidence do you have to support what you just said? Because a lot of the time, when people are spewing things that they know are horseshit, they don't really have a means of backing it up. Sometimes they'll say things that they don't know is BS. They've heard it somewhere else. But I found it helpful to just ask, well, why do you feel that way, or what evidence do you have to support that position? And a lot of the times their argument will fall apart, or at least it'll give them, and this is the beautiful thing to see, it'll give them pause if they really are a soulful person and care to maybe dig a little deeper, and maybe they'll find out, well, actually I was misinformed, or that wasn't quite right, and I probably should stop saying things that aren't right because ultimately it'll make me look like a misinformed idiot. So,
Well, that's clever.
and I've been misinformed about things too, and had to dig deeper before I start, engaging in conversations about or speaking to any subject. That's been a learning process too, and I guess it's part of maturity and growing up. It's really doing the research before you start talking with authority, or at least giving your opinion on something. You really got to know what you're talking about. I think it's every human being's responsibility that they should adhere to and revere as a kind of a solemn responsibility. And the only people that don't do it on purpose are those that are part of the corrupt machine, or are just trying to enrich themselves at the cost and degradation of others, which is immoral and wrong. And sadly, there's a lot of people in not just the United States, but the world that are doing that. But it's, because we live here, we see it a lot in the United States. And the whole Trump thing and voters for Trump and and all the wealthy people that all they're worried about is, well, I get, my taxes keep getting cut. So I think that's good. Well, don't you realize that you're making the country weak that gave you so much opportunity and made you strong?
Right on.
You're not paying it forward, you're actually degrading it. And that to me is immoral.
Which is also a parasite. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, dude, you are, incredibly charismatic and clever with that approach. And the bottom line, that is a superhero construct. And I'm so glad that we could share, all of these, experiences and concepts and what's important to delve into what I want to now share my screen to indulge for the rest of this conversation. Just because you represent what I'm trying to activate around the country. Because I know there's millions of people like us.
Yeah.
I've met literally in my life thousands of them. Right. And
yeah, there has to be millions of people that view things the same or a similar way.
Well, that think and that are dynamic, but that
right.
work, right. In cooperation for the betterment of the whole, that can, accept that maybe this is wrong or maybe that's a little better. And then, together we work it out and all those sorts of, gestures of quite frankly, collaboration, and when we are able to merge, powerful forces that bring so much to the table, we're better for it. And that is just the opposite of the extraction that you just spent the last 45 to 50 minutes describing, which is everywhere. And by the way, we could go on for another 4 hours and still barely scratch the surface.
Sure. We absolutely could. Yeah.
But I want to just kind of get your response to this platform that I've created. And I want to see how you interact with it based on everything we've talked about. So, as you know, I've been a documentary filmmaker for a long time. I've been inside the belly of the beast. I specialize in corruption. I specialize in financial corruption. And I specialize in high-level sort of government collusion within that corruption at the highest levels of finance, primarily.
Right.
But it led me on this journey because I've always come from the background of, trying to find a fusion between entrepreneurialism, moving the ball forward, new energy paradigms, the next great thing that is, see a need, fill a need, but at the same time is something that improves the lot of our lives rather than destroys, all within the context of liberty and justice for all, integrity, and those things that we grew up believing in, right? So what I created was the Clean New Deal, the declaration to reboot the American dream. And what I start off with is I proclaim that we don't live in a democracy, that we don't function as a capitalistic system. I say that the law is unequal, that we don't have separation of powers. I say that corruption rules everything. Is there anything about those declarative statements that you would disagree with?
No, there's not. I mean, I think you've captured it. It's certainly not a democracy. It's talked about a lot, but again, it's lip service rather than action or reality.
Well, they baked in a whole lot of like specific rug pulls and like secret chambers and all sorts of things to prevent any democracy ruled by the majority to happen. And we'll get into.
I mean, the only way we still exist in a democracy is that we still, hopefully, will be able to continue to have and hold on to free and fair elections where our elected representatives are supposedly elected by the vote, one person, one vote.
Right.
And that was threatened, and Trump tried to overthrow that when he lost to Joe Biden.
Yeah, and we're staring down the barrel
in all sorts of bullshit ways, like
martial law,
the alternate electors that he tried to insert, and all the things he tried to do because he's so incompetent, and so were all the goons around him, failed, and so he had no choice but to send his Nimrod followers down there to the Capitol and resort to violence and try to interrupt the peaceful transfer of power.
That's right.
And
here's a question:
make his vice president not verify the ballot.
That's right. And by the way, do you remember during that election, right before that happened, Vice President Pence was at the University of Utah with the big fly on his forehead?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember that on national television? Like he was like
Yeah,
a demon or something.
when he had that debate with Kamala and that fly kept landing on him, I just kept thinking of, well, yeah, he's demonic. Like
Right,
it's
exactly.
so it's
It's
just so representative and metaphoric of just him being this corrupted, dark, stinky soul that the fly is drawn to. It was
exactly.
it was wow, that was pretty powerful.
So let me ask you this question. Do you think Trump was the mastermind of everything that you laid out just there?
Uh, yeah, absolutely. Him and his advisors. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well,
Absolutely. Of course he was.
what I say is that he was a wag the dog,
Yeah.
transparent, transactional pig for the oligarchs that made him possible. That's my
Yeah.
position. And when I
Yeah,
say
I
that,
agree with that. But I guess to answer your question more clearly, I'm sure he was absolutely aware of the false electors scheme
oh, absolutely.
and listen, none of the things we just tried worked out. So we have to revert to having, your mouthpieces call for everyone show up. Steve Bannon, show up on January 6th. It's going to be wild. And they called them. They called them all to go there. And you've got to fight for your country because this election was stolen. What evidence do you have? Oh, we have none, but it was. It was stolen. It was the ballots. There were irregularities, all that bullshit.
Yeah, but to your point, I do
And
think
his
actually
attorneys.
I'm going to contradict myself because I do think he was the mastermind of what you just said. Because his whole
Well, he agreed with it and was knowledgeable about it. I don't think he's smart enough
well, no,
to
but
have
just one
masterminded that whole thing. But he
one
was certainly aware of it.
one specific part. He has lied on documentation fraud in real estate for his
Yeah,
entire career. He's doctored
absolutely.
all sorts of bullshit. So I thought I maybe someone said, "Hey, we could actually steal the election through the elector slate. What do you think about documentation fraud?" And he was probably like, "Oh my god, that
Brilliant.
yes,
Yeah.
I know how that's done." So
Yeah.
anyway, what I say is Clean New Deals is the democracy's answer to Project 2025 because that was built by the billionaire class that
Right.
created everything that basically the hostile takeover of the United States, and that's what it is that I'm proclamating. So basically, I want to just jump.
And yeah, by the oligarchs and the Heritage Foundation, which
Yes,
is
which is
like
exactly
a political arm of the oligarchs.
yeah. And by the way, they're all tied to oil too, as you know, right?
Of
And
course.
other
Yeah.
things, but oil is pretty much the anchor to all of it. So, a couple of questions here. I phrased the Clean New Deal entry point by illuminating that everything is a perversion of what we think we are, and I do that through the four questions. And I ask, what is qualified immunity? Do you know what qualified immunity is?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Uh,
the police being able to shoot to kill without being held accountable.
well, or conduct other actions without having
Well,
any
true.
accountability.
Absolutely.
It's not just killing citizens or sending them off to gulags or foreign countries or jails without any due process. It's all the other starting this war.
Right. Which
That's
is fascism, basically.
accountability. That's insane.
Or another name is called tyranny because
Yeah.
if the police are above the law, what about the justices? What about judicial immunity? What about that is separation of powers?
What about the executive branch that's supposed to get the go ahead for the authority to declare war unless in an
Great question.
unless in an absolute emergency, and have no consequence for just going ahead and launching the military,
So,
putting lives of our service members at risk for no good reason that can't even be backed up. You don't have a cogent story, and not only that, you can't back anything you say up with any sort of fact. And when your director of national intelligence is called out, she just clams up and won't contradict Trump, and she should be immediately held in contempt and lose that position and fined or charged criminally for lying to Congress.
well,
Anyway,
amen. But the tipping
yeah,
point, because that is the consequence. But qualified immunity, judicial immunity, and you said it exactly. What is executive immunity, right? All of these things are co-linked together in this last piece of the puzzle of the Supreme Court basically knighting the dumbest idiot in the history of the United States as above the law. A
Right.
wasn't masterminded by Trump, but he certainly took it when it was introduced to him, and he's run with it like
Yeah.
nobody ever could probably conceive, looking back, quite frankly. But I love that picture, by the way, of
Yeah.
you know,
That's a great one.
yeah, the Mad Magazine, Mad King. I mean, that's what this whole thing is that
Yeah.
it's the emperor's new clothes, and I like to say
Yeah.
on really bad acid. Now, the fourth question I ask is, what is the Electoral College? The Electoral College, and I don't want to go into too much detail here, but as a tool, to your point previously, it was used to further the electoral slate fraud in the swing states to basically forge the elector signatures to steal the Electoral College.
Right.
But we know what we call the representative republic has always been, through gerrymandering and other elements of Jim Crow and this, that, and the other, the sort of facade of democracy to make sure the rule by the minority stays in control. Would you disagree with any of those questions in the way I set that up?
No, no, and the electoral college should have been done away with long ago.
Right, and there's
it was only set up by those in power when it was set up to, well, things were different then. There was a large portion of the electorate couldn't even read.
That's right, right. There's certain things that should have
and then
evolved.
sadly, there's still people in our country that can't read because our education system needs more funding. But yeah, but that was set up so that, as Mike Lee stated, why should we be held to the whims of the majority?
That's right.
So that the ruling class could stay in power and make it look like democracy, so that the people would be appeased. But that's not at all what's going on. It's not one vote, one person. It's, yeah, the electoral college. It's got to change. But will it?
Thank you for that. Because, look, I studied political science, and then I also minored in journalism. And then I went off to become a producer and all that. But I always believed in the system, but it took me years and years and years to understand the different eras of how certain manipulative tactics. And I'll tell you, one of the big movies that had a huge impression on me was Gangs of New York, the wonderful Martin Scorsese.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was
Bill the Butcher, and how they were able to manipulate elections in the 5 boroughs and all the bare knuckle freaking action. But that's American history, basically, right? You think of it as fair and this and that. No, it's like full on. We're going to force you on our side and yada yada yada. But anyway, the bottom line is I set this up because I wanted to set the table that you don't live in a democracy and you don't have a capitalistic system, which means you don't have free markets and you don't have separation of powers, which enables dynamism. See, when you have an aircraft that functions on all of the different elements and all of the things that go into flight, you know that all of the systems have to work in balance and harmony to be able to enable that system to function properly. That goes for every innovation in history. So if this is designed a specific way, do we think that's by accident?
No, well, you'd be silly to think that it is designed by accident. It's absolutely structured.
It's a further erosion because a lot of this stuff has only happened in the last 20 years, mostly because of money scenarios, okay? In a revolving door. So that takes us to really the final conclusion here, that have you thus far seen anyone out there politically oriented? You mentioned some people that you're very impressed with and everything else, but then have a platform requisite the corruption that we're in the midst of.
Sorry, repeat the question. I was just reading your bullet points there, so I didn't.
I apologize. Just to date, as much as that you've identified a handful of leaders like Joel Ossoff, and of course, I think you mentioned. Boy, I was thinking about Ro Khanna, but
Jamie Raskin.
Jamie Raskin, who I like a lot.
Adam Kinzinger, who founded the Country First movement as a Republican. I mean, what a...
No, they're all good guys. But out of curiosity, have you seen a comprehensive platform that is concurrent to Project 2025, Doge, all thing hijacking of our democracy by a corrupt class that's literally stealing billions? have you seen a plan thus far for the midterms that has elevated something to meet head on requisite the corruption that we're in?
No, I haven't, and that's very worrying. And I'm also worried about thinking further on into the 2028 presidential election. It's like what are the candidate you're going to put forward? Democrats should be declaring his candidacy now, or her candidacy now, and starting to build a coalition and starting to build a platform. What are you waiting for? And I don't think the answer is in the GOP or the Democratic Party, because I'm certain that it's not. But no, there is no platform, and there absolutely needs to be, because they've got a very well organized platform with bullet points, with objectives, and with a very well constructed and powerful media machine that they've been building for 30 years.
Well, not to mention brilliant
Since Reagan and Fox News, which is it's what media propaganda machine.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
They're relentless, and we're both professionals, and we know people that have MBAs, make a lot of money, that have certain incentives. We know what they're capable of. They hired all these guys, gave them top dollar to figure out every loophole possible and create a functioning system to completely hijack, like a merger and acquisition back in the 80s and 90s. But they did this to government. Would you disagree with that?
No.
Okay. No. So here's the remedy, as far as I have seen and been able to identify, and this is what I thrust forward. Based on everything that we've been talking about thus far, I think that there's a continuity between us, but I'm very curious how you respond to it. The first precept of the Clean New Deal is that we've got to create a modern day Glass-Steagall Act. Now, not everybody is aware of what Glass-Steagall did. Yeah. After the Great Depression, what we had to do is, because we had an enormous collapse of the global financial system predicated on the collapse of Wall Street. Sound familiar? That happened in the great crash of 1929. After we dug through it and we figured out what happened, because of some fantastic investigation by a guy that not everybody in the United States, in fact, I'd say less than 1% of the population that I've ever come across has ever recognized this name. There was a guy by the name of Ferdinand Pecora who came out of Tammany Hall, who was a Sicilian immigrant. He pulled himself up by the bootstraps kind of guy. He grew up around the mob, but he was an honest guy. He was taking care of his family. That's why he put himself through law school. One thing led to another. He got into a position after the Great Depression to look into what caused the Great Depression. Now, the reason they chose him wasn't because he was an expert in finance. It was because he was an expert in the mob. He understood scams. So they sent him in the belly of Wall Street to figure out what happened, and he did. And as a result of that, we entered the Glass-Steagall Act, where they discovered that Wall Street was gambling with other people's monies based on a bunch of freaking fraudulent bullshit.
And they were mixing investment banking with just commercial.
That's right.
And community banking. And so they knew that if their gambling went up in a ball of flames, that they'd still be bailed out.
That's right, because they were playing with other people's money. The three most dangerous letters in all of finance. Yeah. And as a result of that, these guys, picking up on the investigation and everything that came at that time period, led to the Glass-Steagall Act, which separated commercial banking from investment banking. But get a load of this. They wrote in the statutes back in 1933 that you cannot use the full faith and credit of the United States and the central bank through exigent lending to backstop any sort of commodities trade, particularly in real estate. Would that surprise you?
No.
They knew that in 1933, Cam.
Yeah.
They knew that in 1933. Well,
the funny thing is it was just a repeat.
Yes.
The whole collateralized
debt obligations,
credit swaps.
Yes.
Ratings agency, deplorable failure to not call all these collateralized debt obligations as junk
Yes.
was just a repeat.
Yes. Because we got rid of
And
all
no one
that.
was held accountable.
That's right. We got rid of all that regulation during the Clinton administration primarily. It started in
Yeah.
Reagan, but it went on overdrive during Clinton. And then we ended up with the Commodity Futures Modernization Act. I don't want to get into too much technicality, but
Yeah.
what the new Glass-Steagall Act identifies is that we have got to not only resubstantiate the Glass-Steagall Act, but we've got to make everybody aware that in 2009, we backdoored tens of trillions of dollars illegally through the Federal Reserve, who acted as Congress, i.e., the power of the purse, when nobody understood what was going on, to backstop the criminality, the global racketeering that created the 2008 great financial crisis, and nobody went to prison. That's
Yeah.
the total of my work. So
no one, yeah, no one went to prison because who could have known?
right, and so
God,
what do
who
you
could have
think is
known
going to
this would
happen?
collapse?
We've known people who've gone to the dark side and too much this, that, or the other. What
Yeah.
happens if you give a crack addict unlimited crack? You give them the safe, the crack, and you give them the code to get in. What's going to happen?
Well, he's going to hide it away and then be very diligent about only allowing himself a certain amount of crack. No, he's going to smoke it all as much as he can, as fast
I
as
was
he
like,
can.
what? He's going to binge, man, and then he's going to give himself
Binge.
a heart
And
attack.
these guys that are like, there's no accountability, there's no recourse for us gambling. So why wouldn't we just gamble bigger and bigger?
Why
And
wouldn't
as soon
you?
as the
They're going to
markets
let
got
you
over
do it. They
that,
incentivize it. So you've got it right. So the first precept is to create a new Glass-Steagall Act and make it impossible to use the full faith and credit of the United States to backstop global racketeering. Do you agree with that?
absolutely separation of investment banking and banking vehicles that utilize investments or collateralized debt obligations or swaps, all of that, whole separate operation system, and isn't insured by the FDIC.
That's right. You want to go gamble? Go ahead. But when
Go
you
ahead,
some
fucking have
burn,
at it.
you don't
But
take
yeah,
everybody else
but
down with you.
personal community banks that are insured by the FDIC, they
Right.
can't do any investment.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So
That absolutely, I'm glad that's number one.
so you're in agreement with that. Okay,
I'm
great.
in agreement with that.
So
Totally.
the flip side of the coin is what we hear from Bernie all the time and AOC and others, which says we got to get rid of Citizens United. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Dude, it's funny. I actually had a protest of sorts when that passed, and I had to change a light bulb on the top of the Grand America flagpole that's on the top of their dome on the finest hotel in our downtown.
Yeah, yeah.
And because I worked for a green energy company at the time, and we had created or had access to these long-lasting LED lights. So the problem with that airline warning red light on the top of their flagpole was that it kept burning out. So they had to keep sending workers up there. So a fire marshal taught me how to scour a pole like an inchworm.
Right
and we
on.
practiced down in Little America, and I climbed up there and got paid to do it pretty well, and unscrewed the incandescent bulb and put in a LED bulb, and it's still up there. It's a 10-year bulb. But before I did it, the day before I did it, I went on Facebook, and this was back in the nascent days of Facebook too. And I said, "Hey, this Citizens United passing just infuriates me. This is the worst thing that could happen to our country and democracy worldwide. Is that now our government and system and elections are going to be manipulated by unlimited contributions that are untrackable and untraceable and don't have to be revealed who's making those contributions and where they're coming from, and they can go on into infinity. That's insane. That's like basically selling influence and our democracy away. So I said, I'm gonna climb up the flagpole to protest, and if you're downtown and agree, honk your horn. So I knew I was going to be on the flagpole between the hours of 12.
Yeah. Right on.
So I got up there, and it was funny because I was up there I was pretty gripped because I'm hanging on by a couple of ropes to this flagpole, 8 stories above, or 15 stories above the ground, and And then I started hearing a bunch of honking.
Ah, nice. I
And
love it.
people were driving by, and sure enough, I was up there. But it kind of backfired because my friend saw that lorry and she called KSL and she called ABC News and she called the Tribune and said, my friend Cameron's up there protesting the Citizens United deal. And so they sent news crews to cover it. And I was unaware of this because I'm up on the flagpole.
Just doing your job.
Just doing my job. And security showed up and Steve, the family that owns Sinclair and the Grand America and the Little America.
Yeah.
His son got called, who was running it because his dad was aged and not really running things anymore. And his head of security called him, was like, the press is here. Apparently, there's a protester on our flagpole protesting the Citizens United, and they're covering it. They're down there with their cameras. And when I got down and had done the job successfully, my boss came over. He's like, did you post something on Facebook today? I was like, oh shit. And I was like, what happened? He's like, the press is here. The holdings are pissed.
Oh
He
my
wants
God.
answers. The chief engineer of the whole Grand America was the guy that hired us. And he's like, what are you doing? What was that? He's like, I've got Steve Holding yelling down my collar. Like, dude. And I was like, it was a joke. It was a joke.
So
I didn't know. And I didn't even know what had gone on. I didn't know that Lori had, called the press and told them that there's a protester on the flagpole. So anyway, that was getting off.
For those of you
Yes,
watching this,
I wanted to bring attention to it, and I was super pissed off about the Citizens United passing because I just realized, are you kidding me? Unauthorized, unlimited funds coming from unknown sources directly into campaigns. It's insane.
well, it's insane, and I want the viewers to understand that the Holdings were one of the richest families in the United States, worth many billions of dollars.
Yeah,
their main
oil
is oil, but they own Sun Valley, they own Snow Basin, they own a galaxy of businesses, but they are the embodiment of Citizens United, I would imagine. And so, dude, that is such a great story. My parallel to that, not a parallel, but the way I like to use as a metaphor, and I couldn't have done this until recently, even though it's been in my mind the whole time, but thank you, P. Diddy, for proving it to me. Does anything good happen in the shadows when somebody roofies you? They get trained, man. That's Citizens United, dude.
That is Citizens United.
That's Citizens United. So we've got to turn that on its head as well. Now, this is the most important precept of all, because as you and I both know, Cam, number 3, it deals with money. Everything's about money, isn't it? How are you going to pay for that, right?
It is. Greed, the great destroyer.
How are we going to pay for a renewable energy platform that saves us from this catastrophic end? Really, if we don't get a hold of it, and we're probably past the threshold anyway, but that, or healthcare, Medicare for all, or any number of education, science, this, that, and the other things that this country needs to A, be the superpower that we grew up with, but B, to be able to provide a middle class that we also understand has to be the lifeblood of this economy. How are we going to pay for that, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, 71 trillion. Think of all the things that could have paid for. We would have had beautiful electric bullet trains like Japan and so many other countries have. We would have had gleaming bridges that are new and reinforced rather than crumbling. We have well-paid teachers that attracted the best and brightest males and females graduating college to become teachers because they can actually make an honorable and good living by becoming teachers. I mean, think of that, 71 trillion, and instead it was allocated to supporting corrupted behavior in gambling and having a stop loss for the gamblers because they were the bastards that were making the campaign contributions.
That gave us Trump.
That's I don't know much about that. I know very deeply about that, and that's something that has to be
But that's
absolutely.
why it's there at the very apex of
It
this.
has to be disseminated, and people need to be aware of that.
Because again, we this was all illegal. It was all illegal. Just nobody stopped them. And if you're asking what was illegal, the 2008 great financial crisis basically bankrupted our financial system, okay? Based on lies, based on millions of felonies, literally tens of millions of felonies.
Yeah.
But instead of holding these guys to account, what we did was we gave them tens of trillions of dollars. And what did it
Too
go
big to fail. Let's bail you out because you're too big to fail.
And it led to Trump. They enabled
Yeah.
Trump because I wasn't the only one paying attention. Putin was paying attention. All of the mob guys, the Heritage Foundation, MBS, all the bad guys that like authoritarianism, they were like, oh, well, who's going to stop us? The law is dead. Hey, we'll take some of that, please. That's what we're in the midst of right now. So basically, the idea, is there anything more impactful that you can imagine that the American people come to realize that they have been getting grifted, shafted, raped, pillaged, and stolen from for the last 14 years to the tune of trillions of dollars, particularly those that are dealing with the affordability crisis every day? What do you think that power, that eureka would be if tens of millions of people suddenly understood that to be reality?
Oh, it'd be extremely powerful, and it'd be amazing because elected representatives running for office would also have to be aware of that and run on that platform to make sure it never happens again.
That's right.
Yeah, because if everyone was aware of it and the machinations of how it was created and unfolded and how illegally it allowed all that to happen and no accountability. So many people lost their homes. Thousands, tens of thousands of people lost their homes or were forced to go back to work.
Millions.
Yeah. Retired people had to go get a job at Starbucks.
Yeah, well, we're not just talking about people in their homes. We're talking about their
and it affected in so many dire ways the entire worldwide economy.
That's right.
I mean, brutal.
That's right.
And so, is there hatred for Americans? Fuck, just because of that, there should be residual hatred.
Absolutely, well said, man.
And animosity. And so, if everyone knew what happened, if it was spelled out, if it was taught in school, imagine that if that was taught in college finance classes and high school history classes.
What about the legal profession and how the legal profession, the
legal, like any attorney candidate that's in law school should know that backwards and forwards. That's absolutely right. Good point. High school history classes should teach that for a whole week or two.
Hopefully that's
back in 2007 and 8. This is what happened, and here's why it happened, and here's how it was allowed to happen, and here's why no one went to jail.
And this is what it led to. And
and it also will happen again.
It's happening now.
All the aspects that allowed it are still in place.
It's all happening now again, and the crypto is a big part of it too. Not to mention what we call private credit and all that shit's going down right now.
Yeah, private credit's already having to freeze accounts, and it's having trouble paying off some of their debt obligations.
Oh yeah, it's moving down all over the place right now. And how are they going to fucking bail themselves out? Why do you think Trump wants the Fed for himself again? That's the whole point, even though Jerome Powell was part of the whole thing. So anyway, moving forward, there is nothing we can't pay for. The Congress can budget whatever it needs to. We need clarity in this country that we're spending trillions of dollars on making billionaires the guys that control us, which may as well be the new aristocracy. Ironic, considering we're about to celebrate the 250th anniversary.
Yeah, well, it is the new Gilded Age in the worst ways, in all the worst ways. And Trump's even calling it out. Oh, the new Gilded Age of America.
That's what he wanted.
Well, it's absolutely right, but people don't see what he's really talking about. The thing you got to hand Trump is he's pretty transparent.
He is.
He doesn't try to hide things.
Yeah.
And I really think he takes it as a mandate that he's been a liar his whole life, and he
Yep.
lied to all his supporters and they still voted for him. And he's like, well, they know who I am. I mean, the fucking turtle should have not got on the alligator's back to take him across the stream because I'm an alligator. I eat turtles. So
I
they
love
should
that.
have
That's the
not.
first time I've heard
And
that.
they supported me anyway. So they know I'm a snake. They know I'm a liar. So but they still support me. So I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
I think he sees it as a mandate.
Yeah. My metaphor to that is that look, I've been trying to sell this for the last 4 years. Okay. But
It's
Trump,
hard to change a
Trump
big
has
ship, right?
Trump has done more in the last year to shove this giant toxic shit sandwich down everybody's throat like it's water torture. And
Yeah.
now everybody's like, what the fuck are we going to do? The Clean New Deal is what I'm hoping we're all going to do. So the fourth precept is because the biggest problem of all at this stage is the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Their corruption, their betrayal to the American Constitution. We've got
Terrible.
to get
Yeah.
13 justices in the Supreme Court, play hardball, do the McConnell thing, get somebody like Boasberg in, and turn the tables on this Roberts court. Would you approve of that sort of impetus?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It should have been done. It should have been done right after McConnell blocked
That's right.
Garrett Merrick Garland from being Obama's pick and saying, well, we can't vote on this now. It's too close to the election. It's a year away. And then shortly thereafter, rushing to have a vote when Trump was in office because was it who died? The Italian.
Oh, you're talking about. Oh, yeah. By the way,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, that
So
concerns.
they pushed that through, rushed it through in like 3 weeks.
Yes.
When just before, well, we can't, that's unfair to the American people. We'd rather have this consequential Supreme Court election this close to or nomination this close to the election. We've got to wait till to see how that plays out. Well, yeah, but when the tables are turned and you have power, let's get who was the latest? What's her name? Trump's latest pick. That's the
From
Catholic.
Denver. The final one was
now Ginsburg died, but the one that replaced her, that they rushed her nomination through and made sure she got voted in. It's total contradiction and hypocrisy
of course, because
I absolutely agree with that, and we do have to play hardball because the GOP and McConnell did.
That's right. We just got to meet them head on, dude.
Yeah, just say, you're corrupted, and so if that's the way you're going to play, we're going to expand it to 13 justices.
That's right. So then the next four precepts of what we've already covered. We got to end qualified immunity. We got to end judicial.
Qualified. Yep. They keep saying it, but it's got to have teeth. No one is above the law.
That's right. And we got to end presidential immunity. That's the most ridiculous thing in the history of the United States that the Supreme
Court. Insane.
And
that was even, when they were arguing that, and Trump's attorney was arguing, well,
I could shoot him on 6th Avenue.
I could shoot someone on 6th Avenue, and
I could have the Navy SEAL kill my.
I could have a political assassination that I ordered not be held accountable.
Right. Yeah, we should have millions of people
out of your mind.
We should have millions of people protesting at that point. In fact, when it happened, Biden could have turned the tables at that point with
Biden should have said, well, if that's your ruling, then I think there's a few people I want to eliminate.
That's right. And I'm not leaving office.
I'm going to go call in SEAL Team 6 and get the thing started.
Exactly.
If it's good for you and I can be also have immunity, then before I'm out of office, I'm going to do it.
That's right. And
that was the ridiculousness of that whole argument of like, well, okay, Biden's still in office, so go ahead and grant presidential immunity. And Biden, let's eliminate some people. In fact, let's get Trump killed right away.
Right? Why not? So dude, I say all the time, and I need all of the Second Amendment right guys to know this. When I say end qualified immunity, I don't mean the cops shouldn't be able to shoot people. They should have shot a lot more people on January 6th than they did. I'm just saying they shouldn't be above accountability. For
When they were
example,
being bludgeoned and gassed by a mob,
right?
they were being attacked.
That's right.
And they had every right to brandish weapons
Absolutely.
and defend themselves.
Yes. And they oh my God, the whole thing is so sick.
Can you
Then
imagine what a bloodbath it would have been if there was Democrats and people of color that had rushed the Capitol?
it would have
It
been
would
a
have been an
bloodbath.
absolute massacre.
It would have been an absolute massacre. So
And
moving,
the Electoral College, that goes without saying. That should have been done
absolutely.
years ago.
And then the final two precepts are
Term
institute
limits, absolutely.
and then prohibit insider trading.
Yeah.
So is there anything there that you don't support?
No, I agree with all of it.
Okay.
Strong.
I thought you might, because here's the thing, dude. Look, and I say this all the time. This is my
It's time. I mean, that we need a new platform, and it needs to be a platform that's as well organized and powerful as more powerful than the 2025
That's right.
Heritage Foundation put together as an answer to it and a different choice.
That's right. And it's paint by the numbers. Is there any
and also you've got the truth of the numbers behind you?
That's right.
Because any sensible half-witted citizen should support the New Deal platform because it benefits them and it's in their best interest, not the best interest of their oppressor.
It's America. It's the revolution.
America.
It's just what we're supposed to be, that we're not. And so it's a revolution of truth. And what I say is that if you, me, and everybody you see who isn't a Nazi, who believes in dignity and decency and liberty and justice for all, integrity, beauty, sustainability, equality, fairness,
equity,
and that, and unite behind the Clean New Deal, it's our destiny to purge the misery of tyranny, if and only if you become a nuclear reaction to the Big Bang of truth this represents. Do you think that's a good sort of impetus?
I do. And there needs to be a new movement. It's time. We're out of time.
We're out of time.
There needs to be a foundational, well-organized, and structural, with dedicated goals, organization to rally behind.
Amen,
a movement,
brother.
A movement to join and rally behind.
So can I
by the people, not for the bullshit and for the corrupt.
Can I welcome you on board?
Please.
Okay,
it'd be my honor, actually.
Ladies and gentlemen,
and thank you for all the work you've done to get this set up and make it and state it and organize it in such a cogent and powerful.
It took me millions of dollars and years of effort to deal with guys in the world to do this. And I got to the point where I'm looking around and I'm like, why isn't anybody saying what I just learned? Because they're all in their silos and we've got to break through the madness. And
I remember when this all started for you, when you and Marty lost your house, like millions of other people, when the whole fucking meltdown happened. And I lost the house that I built out of the point of the mountain and a condo I owned as an investment and had to declare bankruptcy, all because the whole thing went up in a big ball.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I had to get into commercial real estate, massively in debt, having just declared bankruptcy, and driving my friend's 1992 Subaru Impreza. And I'd have to actually borrow people's cars that had nice cars when I had to go pick up clients at the airport or take clients around, because I couldn't show up in my beat up, dented friend's Subaru Impreza. And that's how I started in commercial real estate. Unreal. And the reason I was building that house out of Point of the Mountain and bought this investment condo on a variable interest rate loan that then reset, and my tenant was 3 months behind and then moved out in the dead of night, leaving me in the lurch. And then a month after that, my interest rate reset and my monthly payment went up $600 a month. And I had a buyer for the house I had just finished with all the savings. I depleted my savings. I maxed out all my credit cards, and I had good credit to get this house done. I had a buyer that had $80,000 in down payment. They were going through Countrywide. That was right when houses in the neighborhood started going into default. And they said, well, it didn't appraise. I said, well, get another appraisal then, because I'm tapped out. I'm done. And they're willing to buy it. And they've got $80,000 in down payment. And they said, well, we just don't do that. We're by the book. And it just didn't appraise within a 12 block radius. And the higher up I went in the organization of Countrywide, the worse it got. They were more obtuse and just dismissive and like, oh, we just, nothing we can do. I was like, a week ago, you guys, because I saw the appraisal, we're doing appraisals from a 3 mile radius. And now you're saying you can only do appraisals from a 12 block area where 3 of the houses in this neighborhood have gone into default. And I just realized, it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and my stomach just sank. Like, oh, I get it. It's a completely corrupted system, and it's over.
I'm glad you told me that, dude.
It's over, and they're gonna pretend like they've been by the book this whole time, and like, how could we have known? And I just
dude,
realized,
they were the worst actor in the coury that freaking destroyed tens of millions of people.
I had my construction loan with them, and the buyer was getting financing through them and had 80 grand, and they could have got that house off their books, and they just didn't want to, because they were pretending like they'd been playing it right and by the books the whole time.
Did you know that their CEO went behind the gates in Santa Barbara and made out with about $750 million?
No, I didn't know that. Where is he now? In Mexico somewhere?
Dead, thank God. He died like 2 years ago.
Oh,
old age. Anyway, look, dude, I want to close on this note because, Cam is a guy that I've known for a long time. Like a lot of people, we've kind of in and out of each other's lives over the course of years. And I'm so proud to know you, bro. What you've said tonight has really inspired me. I'm so grateful to have you on board. I consider you a very good friend, but now we can unite and we can expand and we can grow. And we're doing this all over the place. And for those watching this who can relate to Cam and go, shit, that guy sounds like me. Yeah, that's right. We need more.
I am you. And you're me, and we're all in this together.
That's right. That's right.
And at this point, I don't even care if you got fooled by Trump or you were Republican or Democrat. It's not about that anymore. It's about us talking and figuring out a new path, because it's not about the parties. They want us to have parties and pointing fingers, so we're fighting against each other while they rob us blind. That's their whole structure.
And I can tell you, man,
we keep doing it like a bunch of dipshit monkeys, and we need to stop that, because they're just laughing.
Yeah, they're just laughing. No, they are laughing. And see, the thing was, throughout my whole life, Cam, I've never been somebody's bitch. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
dude. I've never been afraid to step into it if I needed to. And the fact is, that just translated after a while. And I'm like looking around, I'm just going, these guys are just freaking idiot assholes. That's it. They're not to be appreciated. They're just lying, conniving, thieving.
They're not to be appreciated, revered, or honored, or looked up to. They're rat, bastard, manipulative, corrupted, power wielding assholes. I mean, they are. And how dare you degrade this great country and make your fellow citizens' lives worse off and affect their health, their longevity, their well-being, when this country's given you so much? How dare you do that? That's immoral. You don't need to make 40 or 400 times more than your employees make. You could make 40 times more, which is still a lot, and be fine. The whole inequality structure of how people are paid, what CEOs are paid, needs to be investigated, and there needs to be laws with that as well.
We know how to do it.
It's just,
we know how to do it, Cam. I'm telling you, I've worked with
the main point is how dare you take the wealth that you've accumulated by this country giving you the opportunity, and then using it to degrade and uneven the playing field, degrade the experience of all your fellow citizens and uneven the playing field so few other people get that opportunity.
Like I said before, it's
immoral.
They're pimps, whores, junkies, and parasites feasting on the bloated dead whale American dream. They're the
Yeah.
only ones who thrive in this, man. And the only way you get rid of that is when you purge the tumor of corruption with the truth.
Right.
And that's
Right.
what
And
this.
dude, it's an honor. Thank you so much for doing all the work. Thanks for inviting me into this. And yeah, let's keep building it.
Cam, I'm
It's
honored and
time.
so grateful. And I look forward to next, man. You have a great night, and I'll be in touch soon. And everybody else, have a wonderful weekend. And please reach out to me. Please like, subscribe, and share. Please join us. Remember, the clean new deal, onwards and upwards. Later,
Like,
bro.
subscribe, and share. Later, bro. Good to see you.
Take care, man.
Peace.